What's up and welcome back to another live stream slash edited cut down, which will be on the main channels later, of the absolute best deals that you can find on gaming laptops in July 2023. Now, a bunch of these sales just started like literally today, but some of them have also been going on for a few days. But we're going to go over, I think, 18 different deals today, and it's going to be across a wide range of prices starting at $599. Then we're going to have some at like the $800, $1,000 mark, some around the $1,300, $1,400 mark, and then we're jumping all the way up to the more expensive RTX 4080 and 4090 gaming laptops that I think are like the very best overall bang for the buck. So we're gonna go through all of those. We're gonna show you the best ways to buy them, the best places to buy them. Well, there's not links to each individual deal because there'd be just so many links in the description, but there is a link to my laptop spreadsheet where you can find all the rest of the links. This is my all 2023 gaming laptops ranked spreadsheet. So this has over 311 laptop listings now on here. We've got benchmarks for almost every laptop to give you a rough idea of CPU performance and GPU performance, as well as the value versus the dollars you are spending. All of the best laptops here feature at least $8 or higher points per dollar. Some of the laptops down here also have really good deals. There are some good deals spread throughout. So just because it's not in this video list doesn't mean necessarily that it's not a great deal. There are some really good deals out there that are not quite in this list, maybe partially because like I'm doing like one configuration of that laptop in this list, but maybe there are 2 or 3 configurations in the list, like for example, the Omen 17, you can get that with a 4060, 4070, 4080, or 4090. I'm just putting the 4090 in the deal list, and the other versions of that laptop are also on sale and they're also really good. So depending on the laptop, there may be multiple configurations for that laptop in the list down below. So if there's a laptop that you're particularly interested in and you want to see all of the available configurations, you can use the sheet here to filter. So if you wanted to see all of the Omen 17 versions that you can potentially buy, I put the 4090 version up here in the top deals section, but as you can see, the 4060 versions on sale for $1249. Not a particularly amazing deal. That's why it didn't go up under the top, but it's a pretty decent deal considering the quality of the processor and everything else you're getting with the machine. The 4090 version being a QHD display, 1 terabyte SSD, 16 gigs of DDR5, and RTX 4090. It's the cheapest 4090 that money can buy right now, and it's less than $2,500. So that's one of the deals that we're going to be talking today. But just know there are multiple deals down below for each of these configurations, and almost all of the available configurations for almost all of the gaming laptops that are out there are located somewhere on this list. Not quite all of them, but like all the major configs, like with the different GPUs primarily, and sometimes even with multiple CPUs for that same laptop, depending. But if we listed every possible combination, there'd be like 1,000 or 2,000 laptops on this list. So we try to maintain it and keep it down to just the major CPUs and GPUs on this list. Now, best way to use this list is to look at the top deals section, which right now has 18 different laptops. And then you can also scroll down through here. You can filter by specific GPUs. You can filter by price points over here on the pricing on the left. So if your price point is the $1,000 to $1,500, you can just type $1,000 to $1,500 over here, and you'll be able to filter down to your exact budget range. And then from there, you can also sort by most powerful time spy score, which is going to give you the most powerful GPU, or you could filter by the most powerful Cinebench score, which is going to give you the most powerful CPU typically within that price range. And then from there, you can click on each of these listings and you'll see pictures for each of the laptops, as well as if I've done a review or if we've posted a review from another reviewer for a video of that laptop. You can easily click through and watch any reviews. Now, there are also benchmarks on here, which you can find under the benchmark sources. If the benchmark numbers are rounded, then that likely means that it is an estimated value. So take it with a grain of salt and check detailed reviews if you can find them on that laptop, because some of these laptops don't have detailed reviews, or we weren't able to find the benchmark number specifically for that exact configuration for that laptop. So we estimated based on similar configs that have a similar power range or power design for that processor or GPU. On this sheet, you've got battery size, graphics power, ports quality rating, and basically the ports quality rating is if it has a perfect selection of ports. It's a 100% rating, and for each type of port it is missing, it is docked like either 5 or 10%. Like if it's missing a USB-A or different ports, basically it'll just keep going down. There's an exact rating system that we're using for the ports rating. You get the laptop weight, so if you want to filter or sort by certain sizes of laptops. You also have display size. You can filter for smaller displays, larger displays, and total volume, which is also great for portability. If there is you want a very portable system, you're going to be looking for like 130 cubic inches or smaller. You could go as low as like 100. They can get very small, 80 cubic inches for the G14. So that's like an example of a really, really portable laptop right there. You can also filter by thickness, and there's also tech specs links, which can link you to the technical specs for each laptop in the list as well. So this will let you go and see all the different configs, all of the details on the ports and display quality, that at least claims by the manufacturer regarding display quality and all of that. So there's a ton of detail on this sheet, and I would encourage you to spend some time over here on it, shopping around. And of course, once you do decide to buy, there is a link to where you can buy each of the laptops down at the bottom of each listing. And we do update this every day to try to make sure that the pricing is accurate and stock and availability is accurate. So we're monitoring these laptops for when they go on sale and when they're not on sale. When we move we move them in and out of the top deal section as well when they're on sale versus when they're not on sale. First up, the Lenovo Ideapad Gaming 3. This has a Ryzen 5 5600H, RTX 3050 Ti, and 8 gig DDR4 3200 MHz memory, only $599, 256 gig SSD, and it's a full HD 120Hz. So this is the ultra budget gaming laptop. If you're in the market for like something for your kid, or you don't have very much money right now for a gaming laptop, but you want to be able to play 1080p games at reasonable settings, this is going to be able to play most 1080p games, no problem, at medium to high settings. Probably no ray tracing. Some of the newer games, you might have to turn the settings down extra low because it is only a 3050 Ti. But if you've got a $600 hard budget, you can't go more than that. Then this is going to be the most gaming performance for your money pretty much out there. You might be able to buy a used RTX 3060 for around the $600, $700 price point. But that would be the next best bet, is going for that. And maybe eventually we'll see RTX 3060s going down to this $600 price point, but we haven't yet. The cheapest RTX 3060s are usually like $750, $800 still. So, and at $800, we're gonna actually take a look at the RTX 4050, which is now $800 for the MSI Bravo. So the Bravo is another one of the cheap MSI gaming laptops out there. The big downside with going with the cheap gaming laptops from MSI is that they tend to have lower quality displays attached to these laptops and potentially lower TDP power limits as well. And that's like true of the MSI Cyborg, the GF63. The Bravo, it claims to have 105 watts TDP for the GPU. So you're supposed to get a good amount of power to the RTX 4050. Now you get a Ryzen 5 7535HS. Let's just look. It's a Zen 3 Plus architecture. So it's not the latest Zen 4 architecture. And it looks like it's a 6-core, 12-thread, 35-watt part. It's obviously going to go more than that. 6 nanometer for the manufacturing technology. So it's older tech in this for the CPU. The display is also not that great. I don't think the Bravo 15 is going to be one of the very best deals. But if you're after like good amount of GPU performance, you don't really care about the display quality as much, this thing will at least mostly get the job done. It's really not one of my top recommended laptops though, because it also only has 8 gigs of RAM, which means you're going to have to upgrade the RAM to 16, maybe even 32 later on down the line. And I have not got my hands on with the Bravo 15, but it's basically very similar to the GF63 Katana series, or like the Pulse 15. But it is, yeah, this is like the ultra budget version, $799. It's the cheapest RTX 4050 we've seen so far, but it's not really my top recommended under $1,000. Let's talk about Acer Nitro 5. I have done a review on this. I did a detailed unboxing and live stream. This thing originally cost $999. It's on sale, $100 off. You get an i5 12500H. That's a pretty good processor. Not necessarily absolutely amazing, but it gets 14,752 in Cinebench R23. That's pretty good for an $899 laptop. One of the highest CPU performance you're going to get under $1,000 for sure. The RTX 4050 is a high power 105 watt, and we saw a good amount of power going through that GPU. 8,775, not overclocked with the RTX 4050. And this is going to provide excellent 1080p gaming performance. Most of the games can even run with ray tracing. As long as you're running DLSS 3 with frame generation, you can definitely run ray tracing in most of the games, and usually ultra settings at 1080p. Now, QHD gaming, you're going to be able to do some games at QHD, absolutely no problem, but you're probably not going to be able to do ray tracing and some of the fancier features at QHD resolutions. But this thing has a ton of power and performance for $899, and it's got the 16 gigs of DDR5 memory. It's got a 512 gig SSD, and the display is also higher quality than the MSI. So that's why I'm thinking if you got under $1,000, the Nitro 5 here, this thing is gonna it's gonna provide more bang for the buck and be a better overall gaming experience for the under $1,000 crowd than most of the other under $1,000 ones. There are some other options under the $1,000. If you're a big fan of the Lenovo series, there is the Lenovo Ideapad Gaming 3. This is like a more powerful version of the $600 one. It's got a Ryzen 7 7735HS with an RTX 4050 at a higher-ish 85 watt TDP. Not quite max TDP, so a little bit reduced performance compared to the Acer Nitro 5. It's got a full HD 120 Hz display. Again, a little bit better quality than the MSI budget displays, but not by a lot. It's a little bit lower refresh rate, but I think the colors on it were a little bit better, and the ghosting was also a little bit less noticeable compared to the MSI budget laptop displays. But for $899, it's another option out there. I think it's a worthy contender, especially if the Acer Nitro 5 sells out, but it's not like, again, I think the Nitro 5 is a better choice than the Idea Gaming Pad 3. We have the Lenovo LOQ, or LOQ, LOQ is usually how you say it, 16. This has a 16-inch display, so 16 by 10 aspect ratio, which is really great. A Ryzen 5 7640HS processor, RTX 4050, 8 gigs of DDR5, 5600 RAM, 512 gig SSD. So downside immediately, only 8 gigs of RAM. You're going to have to upgrade this. It's also a little bit cheaper, 863. Phenomenal game, phenomenal bang for the buck. The processor doing 12,655. Again, not as powerful as the Acer Nitro 5 processor, but it's pretty dang close, and it's a little bit cheaper than the Nitro 5. I think this is a really good deal option, but just know that you're probably going to want to upgrade that RAM. I don't know if you can configure this when you order it. It can pop over to Lenovo's website. If you buy any of the Lenovo laptops, you're going to want to use extra 5 coupon codes and be looking for the coupon codes and apply them. We're going to be adding a coupon code category to the laptop list, so be looking for that. Try to figure out what the best Lenovo coupon codes are, and I'll probably put it as a pinned comment on this live stream if I can. See, I'm not sure if that's the current price or not. This may not be fully updated to the most recent, or maybe there's a coupon that I'm missing. Even at $963, it's still pretty dang good, right? But it's not quite as good a deal as we had listed on the sheet. Next up is probably one of the top 3 deals, one of the best deals for sure. It is the Acer Nitro 5. This is the 2022 design edition with a Ryzen 7 6800H processor. This gets 13,100 in Cinebench R23. That's very good. It's an 8-core 16-thread processor, RTX 3070 Ti. This thing is phenomenal. That's a really high-power GPU, and this is rated 150 watts to the GPU. So it's a very high TDP for the RTX 3070 Ti, and it's got a pretty decent port selection. It's a very plasticky, more budgety build still, but the big thing about it, just so much GPU performance and CPU performance for the money, and at the same time, you're getting a QHD 165 Hz display. So 11,000 in time spy approximately. This gives the highest GPU performance per dollar of any of the laptops on the list. Yeah, $969 right now. Absolutely insane. I don't know. This thing is going to sell out. It was $999, and now it's even $30 more off. So I think this is probably the best deal for under $1,000 right now. 1 terabyte SSD, that's bigger than normal. QHD display, that's rare under $1,000. And it's supposed to be a 100% DCI P3 color gamut rated, so it's a high quality display, while at the same time having a great CPU and GPU. You can do anything with this laptop. You can video edit, you can stream with it, you can all the latest games on the highest settings, mostly except for the latest titles. The QHD resolution is going to struggle some with the VRAM limitations in the latest games that are very high demand for VRAM. At QHD resolution, you might end up having to turn some of the textures down in some of the latest games. That's the main downside with going with this one, is that the 3070 Ti with only 8 gigs of VRAM is just not quite enough for some of the latest games. This Nitro 5 is my favorite pick for under $1,000. The MSI Katana 15. This thing has another crappy display on it, but you are getting an RTX 4060. This is one of the cheapest RTX 4060s money can buy at $999. If you're after frame generation support, you want to play AAA games primarily, that's when, like, this thing, the MSI Katana 15, it'll put out higher frames than a 3070 Ti in frame generation supported titles. I would recommend getting a RTX 4000 series laptop over 3000 series, unless you're just after raw performance and you don't really care about frame gen. If you're an esports player, frame generation is not something to consider into your purchase or factor in at all. So yeah, I would not recommend this as a top pick, mainly because of the display. A full HD 144 Hz display is just not a super colorful display, but I would recommend this from a perspective of GPU performance per dollar, especially if you're going to primarily be hooking this up to an external display and you want the latest frame generation support and you want the most performance for your money under $1,000 with frame gen support, then this is going to be up there as one of the top picks for under $1,000. I don't know if it'd be the very top pick, but it'd be pretty close because it's one of the only RTX 4060s that you can buy with 16 gigs of RAM, a 1 terabyte SSD, and an RTX 4060 that's a higher power limit. HP Victus 16 i5 13500HX HX processors have more efficiency cores added for additional multi-core performance, essentially. The RTX 4060 in this, we got a 16 gig DDR5, 4800 memory, 512 gig SSD, a little smaller, and it's a full HD 144 Hz 250 nits display. Overall, this is going to have phenomenal CPU performance at $17,000. That's going to be really good CPU performance for your money. A $1,019. This thing's also going to have a really good graphics performance for your money as well. And if you're a fan of HP products, then this is also the new 16-inch display design from HP. Notice that it has a number pad here on the keyboard. That's different. Even the Omen 17 doesn't have a number pad, which is a little weird, right? So you're getting the latest 16:10 aspect ratio display. You're getting the latest port support. Notice that the rear of the laptop's entirely designed for thermal exhaust. I have not reviewed the HP Victus 16 yet. It's gonna be on my list for reviewing. So I think this is gonna be one of the very best laptops around $1,000 that you can get for the money, without a doubt. So definitely one to consider if you're a fan of HP products and you're on around $1,000 budget. I would definitely recommend this one over the Katana, I think. Yeah, primarily because it has a better CPU. I believe it's gonna have a higher quality display as well. I mean, I haven't tested this display technically, but the Katana display is basically as bad as it gets for gaming laptops. It's really not a great display. Lenovo LOQ 15. Now this is stepping up to like the next tier of the LOQ. It costs $1,099, so $1,100. You're getting Ryzen 7 7840HS, so you're getting a next-gen CPU with Zen 4 architecture, RTX 4060, 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gig, and a full HD 144 Hz 350 nits display. So you're getting a higher quality display that's a full HD, and it's a 16:9 aspect ratio, being a 15-inch, I believe. It's not a 16:10 aspect ratio, which some people actually are going to prefer 16:9. Most people, I think, are going to prefer 16:10, though. So that's one of the downsides and kind of upsides about going with 15-inch for 16-inch. 15-inch, of course, is going to be slightly more portable. Very, very minor difference there. Overall, the LOQ is, I think, a good value for your money. It's going to have decent build quality. It's not going to be super high-end premium, not much RGB on it. It's going to look like a basic business laptop, essentially, but it's going to have decent ports, good CPU performance, a good amount of GPU performance for your money. Moving on to the MSI Pulse 15. This guy has an i7 13620H, really not that different from the i5HX processors, very similar. RTX 4060 in this, but the big thing here is that you're getting RTX 4000 series with a really high quality, high color gamut display. So this is actually the opposite of the other MSI laptops. And when I reviewed this laptop, it was actually $1,500 and it's currently $240 on sale. So basically a massive discount compared to what it was at just like 5 months ago, 4 months ago. Overall, I did like the Pulse 15. It's got a very vibrant keyboard. It feels good. It feels sturdily built. It weighs like right around 5 pounds, so it's still very portable. And the i7 processor is going to provide enough performance for video editing, streaming. If you want to check out, I did a whole Pulse 15 breakdown, unboxing, and review. It performed quite well and had pretty dang good temps overall. And the display is a really high quality QHD. 165 hertz, 100% DCI P3 color gamut display that it tested very well in my display test. And it's an overall great bang for the buck at $1249. But when I compare this, I basically think about like the Pulse 15 versus say like this Nitro 5 with the 3070 Ti. It's got a very similar display, almost the exact same display. Honestly, it might even be the exact same display, but it's rated to be the same. And I look at this versus the Pulse 15, and I think like this is just more bang for the buck when having almost all the same specs, slightly more raw GPU performance without the frame generation support. So overall, I think the Acer Nitro 5 with the 3070 Ti is still a slightly better pick as long as it's in sale. This guy's great overall value. The Pulse 15, also really good overall value. If you were to pick between these two, I think the Pulse 15 has a little better styling than the Acer Nitro 5, and it felt a little bit more put together, a little bit more solid. But for the money, the Acer Nitro 5 was just better value. Okay, let's move on to our $1,200 and up top picks. We're going to start with the Alienware M17 R5. So this has a Ryzen 9 6900HX, basically the top processor from that generation, the 6000 series generation of Ryzen processors. So, but it's last gen. It's not the latest gen, so you're going to get a discount because you're buying last gen. You're also looking at the RX 6850M XT. This GPU scores right around 11 to 12, like 11.9K basically in time spy GPU. That said, Radeon GPUs don't necessarily do as well in time spy as NVIDIA, so it's basically very similar to like an RTX 3070 Ti or 3080, depending on which laptop it's in. It's going to provide overall excellent performance in the vast majority of titles. Of course, there is no DLSS 3 or frame generation support, which is a downside if you're going to try to get, that's obviously not going to be supported because it's an AMD Radeon GPU. I have also ran into more issues with drivers with Radeon GPUs, but for like the vast majority of games, it's going to be good driver support, especially now that it's been out for well over a year. At $1,200, like I feel like that is very good value. Another very good value is 32 gigs of DDR5 memory, so you will not have to upgrade the memory in this pretty much at all. It'll be good on memory for like the lifetime of using the laptop as long as you're just playing games. Certain applications will want more than 32 gigs, but 1 terabyte SSD is phenomenal value, and you're getting a full HD 360 hertz display. So if you're after esports games, this thing is going to have the highest refresh rate out of all of the gaming laptops that I've talked about so far. Of course, this is a 17-inch gaming laptop by Alienware. It's going to have some high-end ports on it. It's also probably going to run fairly warm. Some of the Alienwares, all the Alienwares that I've tested recently, they run a bit warmer, but they also are very high TDP power limits, and they really do push the performance envelope. This is a very large laptop at 7.3 pounds. This is going to be one of the bigger, beefier laptops, and usually bigger and beefier laptops cost more, but in this scenario, it's actually not costing that much at $1199. I feel like that's just very good value overall. If you're okay with a Radeon GPU in your laptop, this is probably the best deal we have seen on a Radeon GPU since maybe the Strix G15 Advantage Edition went on sale for the same price, $1199. And that had a QHD display, but 16, it has some trade-offs versus this laptop. So this is an excellent deal. I can definitely recommend it. Alienware M17 R5, the MSI Katana 15 with an RTX 4070, $1,329, $170 off of the retail price. This is now the cheapest RTX 4070 that money can buy. It's a fairly high TDP, but not max TDP on the RTX 4070. I believe we were seeing a lot of 85 to 90 watts on the 4070 when under actual gameplay. I did do a detailed review unboxing of this MSI Katana. It got 11,300 in time spy, which is obviously very good. The problem with this laptop is that it comes with a full HD. It comes with the same crappy display that's on the Bravo 15 for $799. It's literally like the exact same display. It's low color gamut, lower levels of quality. It's gonna basically give you a basic display to be able to use. And it's also an i7-12650H, which is last generation CPU, and it's not that high of a Cinebench score. Look at that, only 10,874. Very weak overall CPU performance for this laptop, but crowning jewel for this is literally like, it's an RTX 4070 that's the cheapest you can buy, and you got 16 gigs of RAM, you don't need to upgrade that. 1 terabyte SSD, you don't need to upgrade that. If you're just looking for something very portable and the most GPU performance, a GPU focus, like this thing, it'll get the job done. It's definitely not my top rated pick, especially it's one to look at if you're after frame generation support with a high amount of GPU performance for the money. That's basically the primary things. If you're going to mainly use it with an external monitor and only occasionally use the full HD display, and you don't plan on doing any video editing or photoshopping on it because the display's bad and the CPU is not that fast, this thing's going to have good gaming performance from a CPU perspective, just not good multi-core performance. Acer Nitro 16. Ryzen 7 7735HS, so that's a previous gen, basically Ryzen 6000 series CPU, 13,700 on the CPU benchmark, RTX 4070, 16 gigs of RAM, DDR5, 512 gig SSD, a little bit on the small side for this price point, QHD, 500 nits, 100% sRGB display, so a step up in display quality. It's a 16:10 aspect ratio display. I have ordered this laptop in, it is $1349. This should be a high TDP, 105 watts, basically maxing out the wattage for the RTX 4070, around that 105 watt mark. It's got the new latest 16:10 aspect ratio, the new Nitro logo on the back. This thing should be a very high amount of bang for the buck, and since it's a much higher quality display, I'm much more inclined to recommend the Nitro 16 over the Katana 15, even though the Nitro 16 costs $20 more. That display and then the CPU upgrade, absolutely worth it if you can get this when it's on sale at $1349. Big downside here, in my opinion, is that the QHD display is going to require some more finagling. Again, same thing is true for the Acer Nitro 5 with the 3070 Ti, only 8 gigs of VRAM. That's going to be a bottleneck with a QHD display, so know that you're going to have to adjust settings in certain games to be able to get them to run smoothly, dropping textures primarily to a lower setting, or potentially the native render resolution using DLSS or FSR, for example, to be able to lower the render resolution so that you don't run into VRAM stuttering, because that's what happens when you run out of VRAM. The game starts stuttering like crazy. Like I said, I've got this laptop being shipped to me right now. It should be here in a few days, and I'll be able to do a full review on it. Definitely one of the very best deals right now for the under the $1,500 mark. Asus TUF F15. Like the TUF series is like kind of like their military grade gaming focus. I don't know. It's supposed to be extra durable. In my experience, it seems like the same build quality as any other gaming laptop. The big thing here is that there's not so much of a gamery aesthetic to the TUF. It's got a bit more of like a militaristic design to the exterior, which I guess in some ways is a bit of a gamer. But if you just, it doesn't have a bunch of the RGB like that typically is associated with gaming. Some people like that. Now there is a illuminated backlight to the keyboard, but I believe it's just yellow for the backlight. It's not like a multicolor RGB. Now this laptop, I think, has a lot of value. It comes with an i7-12700H, so a previous gen processor, but it is an i7-12700H, so one of the better processors from the previous generation from Intel. RTX 4070 at a high TDP, at least 105 watts. I have got this laptop on order, and I will be reviewing it as well. Now, this laptop is not currently on sale, so we might see it actually go to a little bit lower pricing eventually at some point. Even at the default $1399 price point, Asus, I think, has priced this very competitively to be a superb overall deal. Now, 16 gigs of RAM, so you don't need to upgrade that, but it is only DDR4 3200, so a little bit slower on the RAM. 1 terabyte SSD, which is great to see, and it's a full HD 144 hertz 250 nits display, which is not quite as high a quality as like the Nitro 16. So I again would recommend the Nitro 16 over the TUF, especially given that the Nitro 16 is cheaper. I think this display is going to be a little bit better in some ways. This laptop, and this laptop is also going to feature a little bit of premium features because Asus has this like new standard where they're doing advanced Optimus on everything. So it's going to have a mux switch with G-Sync. Overall, really solid value for a 4070. I've got this laptop on order. I'll be reviewing this. If it ever goes on sale, it'll be like absolutely phenomenal deal. But right now, I think it kind of loses a little bit of its like edge against the Nitro 16, which is a slightly better deal because of the display quality. It's also a 16:10 aspect ratio design, which I think a little more people will be into that than the 16:9 aspect ratio, given the chin here. MSI Vector GP68. This thing is bonkers in terms of its value. It's $1999 right now, $2,000 for an RTX 4080. This is the cheapest RTX 4080 we have seen all year. We've been monitoring all of these deals this whole time, and this is the cheapest. The biggest con to the MSI Vector GP68 is the full HD display is only 144 hertz, 45% NTSC. I'm like, how could they pair a 4080 and an i9 processor with such a crappy display? This is definitely not the same display as the MSI Bravo. Even though it's rated at the same specs, this is a 16:9 aspect ratio display. And this MSI Vector, it has a 16:10 aspect ratio. This is the new design for the Vector. It's not the 16:9, it's 16:10. And we have not tested this display, so I don't know what color gamut and what brightness exactly we're looking at on here. I'm hoping it's better contrast ratio and better overall specs and everything than the ultra budget MSI stuff. But that's one of the things that the MSI is cost cutting, is the display quality, in order to give you a 4080 at $2,000. So if you're after like around the $2,000 price point and you just want the most GPU performance for your money, and you're not particularly like, you don't need a QHD display, this one is going to be the most GPU performance for your money at around the $2,000 price point, most likely, or pretty dang close to it. It's going to be 165 watts to the TDP on the 4080, which is not as high as 175 watts, not the maximum. But you look at the cooling system, it's got a good cooling system here. It's got a very modern design. It's a very similar design to the GE68, which oddly enough only features up to a 4070. So if you want a 4080, you actually got to go with this one. You got a full-size SD card slot on this guy, a great selection of ports all around. It's like MSI were to take their most expensive laptops and change a few things, reduce the RGB, and swap out a couple things for some more budget items. And that's the GP series, basically. And usually the GP series provides some of the best bang for the buck out there. Let's talk about the Lenovo Legion Pro 7i. I have reviewed in detail 4090 version of this. I've actually got it right over there, and I've got to see this in person. I really love the Legion Pro 7i overall in terms of a package that it delivers for the money. The design, the build quality, the feel is phenomenal value. It costs $21.99. You're spending $200 more on this compared to the Vector, but you're getting a massively upgraded CPU. The CPU jumps up in core count significantly from last generation i9 to this generation i9, and it's an HX processor. I also prefer the features that the Legion Pro 7 includes compared to the Vector. The Vector not having advanced Optimus, probably not having G-Sync. The Legion series, I think, having a better keyboard design, better RGB implementation, a better QHD 240Hz 500 nits display. The CPU performance being a massive difference between these two, 27,772, 722 for the out-of-the-box Cinebench R23 score, and the Vector is only going to be getting 17,000. So you're getting a massive upgrade to the CPU, you're getting a massive upgrade to the GPU. This thing, absolutely a monster in terms of looks, design, feature set. I really like it. Really good cooling as well. Good thermals on the Legion series, especially considering it features the highest watt TDP, 175 watts, graphics power to the GPU. Legion Pro 7, it comes with a 4080 or 4090. Right now, the 4080 is $2199. 4090 version costs right now $2699. So that's going to be $500 upgrade for the 4090. You're getting a RAM upgrade, it looks like, as well as the GPU upgrade for that price. Like, I would go with the 4090 between these two, but if you're after like best bang for the buck, I would go for the 4080 version. It's going to be very, very close in terms of overall, like, the system is basically identical. It's going to be like 15% less powerful overall compared to the 4090. And then you're going to save more money. The big downside with the 4080 versus the 4090 version, the 4080 does not have 16 gigs of VRAM. The 4090 version does. And so if you're after 16 gigs of VRAM for basically with a 4090, you can just go all ultra settings all the time at QHD in every single game that you play, and you'll never have to change a setting. The 4080 in games like Hogwarts and Last of Us, 12 gigs of VRAM is actually not enough VRAM to play all of those games at maximum settings. You're gonna have to turn the textures down to like medium or high in order to not run into 1% low stuttering. So that's kind of like my big qualm with the 4080 at the QHD resolution. It's just going to take a little bit of finagling some of your settings with the 4080, which I think is not that big of a deal. The overall user experience will be almost exactly the same. Last up, we have the HP Omen 17. This is the cheapest RTX 4090. I talked about this at the beginning of the live stream. Comes with an i7-13700HX. So you get a downgraded CPU versus the Legion Pro 7i. This only provides 21,500 in Cinebench R23, but it's overall very good gaming CPU, just phenomenal overall value. Right now at $2449, this is definitely the cheapest RTX 4090 money can buy. And if you're after just the most graphics performance for your money at the upper end of the 4090 spectrum, this is it. We had good temperatures, good overall performance in all of the games I tested. I did a detailed unboxing. The display is also a very good display. QHD 165 Hz, 370 nits. It's not a 240 Hz display. That's one of the areas in which the HP team saved money. It's also not 16:10 aspect ratio. It's only 16:9 aspect ratio. So that's a downside here for sure. If you're after a 16:10 aspect ratio, maybe you're not. But in general, you've got a bigger chin on the device itself. I really loved the optomechanical keyboard that I have on mine. The thermals on it, surprisingly good. Port selection on it, absolutely amazing. Fairly portable for the money. But just absolutely monster performance for the money. And it did feel pretty premium overall experience, but not quite as premium as the ultra high end, like the Razers and the Asus Scar series, or even the MSI, or like it's not an ultra premium system. You're definitely saving some money in certain areas. I think one of the downsides here is the screen does have a bit more of a wobble to it. So if you're looking for something that you're gonna move all the time, I would probably pick the Legion Pro 7i definitely over the Omen 17 for that reason alone. Just the wobble on the screen can be a little bit annoying if you're going to be moving it or keeping it like in your lap, for example, in a car a lot. A stiffer hinge is definitely an advantage in that type of scenario. Let's talk through the best 3 deals. I think this Acer Nitro 5 with a 3070, this is the best deal under $1,000. QHD display, 3070 Ti, Ryzen 7 6800H, 32 gigs of RAM. It's just a monster deal. The best deal overall for a Radeon GPU is going to be the Alienware M17, and this is going to be a very premium product. So if you're after something that's like big and not very portable, and you're okay with the Radeon GPU, this thing is probably the best value big laptop on the list right now on the top deal section. Especially if you're an esports gamer, this would be one I would consider, because it's Radeon GPUs are all about raw graphics performance, and you're getting a 360 Hz display. So you're gonna be able to play a lot of esports games at over 240 FPS. Vector here being the best deal with a 4080, at least in terms of raw value. The Legion Pro 7i is probably one, I would say it's worth spending $200 more for the Pro 7i, but if you're right on the edge, the Vector is also just phenomenal value in terms of graphical performance for your money. So yeah, and then if you want to go for the best value 4090, the Omen 17. Like, this is my top pick for a 4090 on a discount right now. I really liked the Omen 17 I had. and can definitely recommend it. But it's not obviously not very portable. Real quick, let's talk best value portable laptop. So portable laptop being, say, less than 5 pounds. Didn't quite make the list in terms of raw value, but if you're after portability and value, the Zephyrus G14 right now is on sale with the 4050 for $1279. So this is, I think, $1429 for full price on this normally. So if you're looking for something more portable and more budgety and you want RTX 4000 support, this is obviously a good value. The 3060 version of this laptop was $799 recently though, and that's no longer for sale at that price point. Maybe it'll go back to $799 again sometime in the future if they still need to sell more. Here is the 4070 version. It's $250 off. This thing is gonna be, it's gonna be awesome. The main issue, of course, being the VRAM limitation, only 8 gigs of VRAM with a QHD display. You're gonna have to fiddle with VRAM, with your textures once again in order to get smooth gameplay. If they did not put the 4060 version on sale, they didn't. So if you want the G14, just go into the 4070 version of the G14 right now at $1599. That's phenomenal value, a very high quality display. And if you tune this thing to be tuned correctly, the way I did my efficiency tuning guide, it's an absolutely amazing laptop that can provide just a great display, great gaming, super portable, good ports overall for its size, and great CPU performance for its size and pricing. So this would be a phenomenal deal as well at $1599, being a 4070 on sale. 500 nits display, very high quality display on this. Absolutely phenomenal. Okay, so anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the live stream. I'll see you guys soon. Peace out.